Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right back in time today to dive deep into a genuinely remarkable ancient text. We're looking at a sacred tour guide by the great sage Lomasa. Imagine getting a guidebook not just for checking out some beautiful landscapes, but a literal guidebook for the soul, because that's exactly what this source material gives us. Let's put ourselves directly in the shoes of our protagonist here. We are stepping into the role of a great king of Bharata's race. We're traveling with our brothers, getting this incredible first-hand tour of sacred lands from a master sage. So when Lomasa says, "Look, O king with thy brothers," he's actually pointing across these vast mythical landscapes, narrating a living map where the physical world and the spiritual world just completely overlap.
To help make sense of all this dense ancient geography, our itinerary today covers four main themes: the ancient sacred tour, rivers of mystery and sorrow, finding peace and tranquility, and finally, the ultimate divine test.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Ancient Sacred Tour, Geography of the Divine.
Our guide, Lomasa, really doesn't waste any time. He instantly grounds us at a deeply powerful, sacrificial spot blessed by the ancient figure Daksha. And the text tells us that thousands upon thousands of men travel to this exact location for one very specific reason. What was it? The ultimate guarantee of reaching heaven upon death. Now, we usually think of geography as, just coordinates on a map, but this text portrays these ancient locations as physical spaces packed with absolute, literal divine promises. You don't just visit this place, you arrive here to permanently secure your eternal fate. Which brings us right into Section 2, Rivers of Mystery and Sorrow, Landscapes of Emotion.
What's super fascinating to me here is how these ancient cultures mapped profound human emotions directly onto the natural landscape itself. Just take the location called Vinasana, for example. This isn't just some dried-up riverbed. The text tells us this is the exact geographical spot where the sacred Saraswati River vanished out of sheer hatred. She literally chose to hide within the earth so her enemies, the Nishadas, couldn't see her. And she only reappears way later at a region called Shodpera, where she finally joins up with other seaward rivers. It's wild. Nature actually has agency here. Nature feels hatred and nature hides.
And this brilliantly illustrates how nature processed profound human loss too. Let's look at the story of the great sage Vasistha at the sacred Vipasa river. Completely overcome with his unbearable grief over the death of his sons, Vasistha literally binds his own limbs in ropes and throws himself into the rushing stream. But look at what happens next. He goes in, physically bound by ropes and entirely consumed by grief. Yet when he rises from the water, he is miraculously unfettered. The river literally undid his bindings and, symbolically, just washed away his suffocating sorrow. The landscape is actively interacting with human trauma.
Let's move on to Section 3, Finding Peace and Tranquility, Sanctuaries of Healing.
The really crucial point to take away here is that people in this text weren't just traveling to worship deities. They traveled to conquer their own inner demons. Consider Rukmini's hermitage. This is presented essentially as an ancient sanctuary dedicated entirely to mental health and spiritual wellness. Rukmini didn't just stumble upon peace here by accident. The text specifically notes that she attained lasting spiritual peace only after battling and conquering the evil passion of anger. The physical journey is totally mirroring the psychological one.
Along those same lines, the text highlights the sacred tirtha called Ujjanaka. This isn't just a pretty forest setting. It's a designated sanctuary where highly revered figures, we're talking the sage Vasistha, his wife Arundhati, and the sage Yavakri, all successfully found deep, complete spiritual calm. The itinerary Lomasa is laying out is basically a map showing you exactly where to go if your soul is feeling restless.
And kind of like a modern travel brochure pitching the amenities of a five-star resort, the sage outlines some highly practical benefits for these destinations. If you visit Vipasa, a spot favored by the sunlight god Indra, you get all your sins removed. At the lake of Panaka, if you time your trip just right and perform sacrifices in the month of Chaitra, you secure your entire family's welfare. Or what about the Vipasa stream? It doesn't just absolve sins, it boasts this extremely cool, limpid water that's highly favored by the great sages. The text is giving you a crystal-clear return on investment for your spiritual travel.
Our guide also points out some absolutely incredible historical and divine wonders along the path, places where the veil between the human and the divine is super thin. Over at Sindhu, we learn Lopamudra accepted the great sage Agastya. In Kasmera, you're standing exactly where a legendary conference took place between the fire god Agni, the sage Kashyapa, and Nahusha's son.
Head over to Manasara Sarovara, and you can actually witness a mountain gap literally cracked open by Rama. And honestly, most astonishingly, at Vatikhanda, there is a totally predictable divine manifestation. The text claims that at the waning of every yuga, every massive epoch of time, the god Siva, who can take on any shape, predictably appears there with Uma and his followers. It's incredible.
The landscape is absolutely packed with these fascinating geographic details. Lamapasa is leaving no stone unturned for our royal tourist here. He points out the visible, sacred region of Vishnupada. He points out Lake Kausava, specifically calling out its famous Kausaea lotuses. He even calls attention to the towering, lofty peak of Brigatunga, which is famously associated with a great man of meditations. Everywhere you look on this tour, there is just something magnificent to take in.
Finally, we arrive at our last stop. Section 4, the ultimate divine test, King Usinara. So the explainer arrives at the Yamuna River, which is flanked by the rivers Jala and Upajala. And right here, something truly extraordinary happens. This isn't just about a god granting a favor to a human anymore. Right in this spot, King Usinara performs a sacrifice so magnificent, so intensely powerful, that he actually surpasses the greatness of the god Indra himself. Just think about the gravity of that for a second. A mortal's actions eclipse the divine king of the heavens. Naturally, this prompts a massive reaction. The gods actually leave the heavens because they are so desirous to test his merit and bestow boons upon him.
So the gods kick off this dramatic, chronological moral test right there at the sacrificial ground. First, Indra and Agni decide to test the king. Second, they use some shape-shifting. Indra transforms into the shape of a predatory hawk. Third, Agni assumes the shape of a vulnerable prey pigeon. Fourth, they enact the scene. The pigeon, feigning absolute terror of the hawk, plummets straight out of the sky and falls directly onto the king's thigh, desperately seeking his protection. They've just placed the king in an absolutely impossible, agonizing dilemma.
And the source material we have today just abruptly cuts off at this exact gripping moment. The pigeon is trembling on the king's thigh. The hawk is circling above, aggressively demanding its rightful prey. It leaves us with such a profound question to chew on. What would you do? Would you risk the wrath of that terrifying hawk to protect the small, vulnerable pigeon that sought refuge with you? How far would you honestly go to protect the weak when you are secretly being tested by the divine? It's a striking reminder that in these ancient spaces, the ultimate destination wasn't a place on a map at all. It was the true nature of one's own character.